I jumped the gun a little bit there, Ed, on the recording. Still admitting people, but rather than stop the recording and then we'll just hang out for a second and finish letting people in. I have to say that George Lindesmith, he's in exactly the same position on my screen as he was yesterday. So
Me too.
Yeah.
Hello, George.
Hello, George. George had some good questions yesterday. We look forward to more of that today, George. So the pressure's on. All right, everyone. We've got a couple minutes. Ed, you want to get started? I can start my preamble, or
Sure, whenever you're ready.
all right.
Here, you read that. I'll keep admitting people.
Okay, you want to do the admit? I can do it.
Yeah.
I've got my finger on it, so I just keep clicking.
Okay.
All right. We're a minute before 11:30, so apologies to anyone that's still trying to get in. Anyway, welcome to the November 13th, 2025 Professional Ethics webinar hosted by the Nevada Board of Professional Engineers and Land Surveyors. My name is Derek, and I'll be handling the mechanics of the slideshow, and Ed will be doing the presentation. By attending today's webinar, licensees will fulfill the PDH requirement for 2 hours of professional ethics for license renewal. And most of you are here because you are coming up on the December 31st license renewal deadline. And so this will get you, oops, I clicked the wrong button, will get you the ethics requirement. It's important to note that you can get ethics. We accept the 2-hour ethics from any other state. We appreciate the fact that you are here. We don't make any money off of this, but we do it as a courtesy or convenience to our licensees. But just so you know, you can fulfill the 2-hour ethics from any other state. I know there's a handful of states that do it. I believe Texas is one of them. Anyway, we're gonna, I think we, the instructions on the ad on the website and stuff says we, are limited to 500 for this, although we may up that amount in the future. We're keeping everyone muted. It just becomes too difficult to try to manage everybody's, if they're able to talk out loud. If you have questions during the course of this, hold tight on the chat. It blows up pretty fast with, what do we have now? 400 or so attendees. It's pretty hard to read through those. So hang tight on the questions. We should have some time at the end that we can use the chat for some of those questions. And I will have my email up later on that you can just send me emails and I can get you a more thoughtful response that way. So send your questions to me by email if you would. I'm also going to give you instructions toward the end of the presentation on how to document your participation in this webinar and get credit. I'll explain that then. Without further ado, I will introduce the presenter, Ed McGuire. He is a retired city engineer for the city of Henderson in Nevada. He currently handles professional standards for the board, which entails interpreting and applying Nevada law as it pertains to compliance investigations. While investigating compliance cases for the board, he regularly considers ethical concerns, which is the subject of today's webinar. So Ed, take it away.
All right, we're up to 486, 488. I'll let you take that over, Derek.
Awesome.
we already have a couple of good comments and one from George. I like this comment, George. Let me go back
Uh-oh.
real quick. This seems more complicated than yesterday. Yesterday being on Nevada law and
Hmm.
NRS and NAC. It seems there are sometimes more than one ethical answer. Sometimes it even seems there isn't one. And I think you're right. I think today is about your duty as an engineer and or surveyor, and I hope to give you some tools and some food for thought, and so that we all make better decisions. So with that, let's jump through the sort of introductory slides. Everyone should be seeing the cover slide that says professional ethics. Um, and remember, per Nevada Revised Statute 625005, the purpose of the board and the board regulates licensees, so really all of us, is to safeguard life, health, and property and promote the public welfare. So uh, engineering is all about public welfare and taking care of the customer, if you will, being citizens, taxpayers, and developers and everybody else. But with that, here is your board. Brent Wright is the current chair. He's a professional engineer and structural engineer in Las Vegas. And Matt Gingrich is a surveyor, lives in Northern Nevada. And then there's the rest of your board members. As a reminder, the board staff publishes the Nevada Connection at least twice annually. We send out updates, invitations to things like this, and general information. And
Oh,
then,
hang on one second, Ed. Sorry to interrupt.
yep.
Somebody just brought it to my attention and I'm looking at it. You are presenting your notes view rather than the
Oh,
presentation view.
okay.
All right. This is,
So, thank you.
yes. Yeah. All right. Thanks.
I'm a trained professional, but not in this part.
Not a Zoom trained professional.
No.
Thanks,
All
Nicole.
right.
We've been, we do our rehearsals and we try to get this right. As Ed says, this is not what we do full time. Although if anybody
Okay.
should be good at this, I guess it should be me. So
Give me a second before I can share. I got to reconfigure so that you see the right screen.
it, there's, you have multiple screens and then Zoom adds a level of complexity because you do the screen share, but then you have to decide which monitor. And if you have multiple monitors, you have to decide which monitor is going to be displayed. And it's not always clear which monitor you're selecting. So that's the excuse that we give.
Hope that makes sense, everybody.
Yeah,
Now, can you see just the slide?
it's coming up. It takes a minute for it
Okay.
to display. So there it is. Now you're good. You just made
Okay.
Nicole very happy.
Thank you, Nicole.
All right. So carry on, Ed.
Okay. I am. It is very slowly showing up on my screen here. All right. We've got a few more in the waiting room as well.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry.
We publish the Nevada Connection, the newsletter, twice a year, at least twice a year. It's now all digital. It goes out as an email to your email that's on file, and then we post it on social media or the information on social media. And then, as Derek mentioned, we do a couple of seminars. We're trying to do this every 6 months to match the renewal cycle. So we did this in the spring. We'll do it in the fall. Yesterday we did Nevada law. Today is 2 hours on ethics that will satisfy the part of the continuing education requirement. And then uh, this is just GWIS information. We've got 14,798, and there's actually more than that because every board meeting we admit some new members. But there's about 15,000 licensed engineers and surveyors with a Nevada license. But about 3,500 that actually live in Nevada. So there's substantial number, 11,000 in the rest of the United States that have a Nevada license. And at the bottom there, you can see by discipline, civil is 53% of all licensees. It clearly dominates the registrations, and then mechanical, electrical tied at 13, structural at 10, land surveyors at 5. And that's
Hey,
something we're always worried about. The land
hey, Ed,
surveyor numbers are not climbing. Um,
sorry to interrupt again. Can you click the little X? You've got a layer on top of a layer.
I
Your
sure do.
Yeah, so click the little X button, I think, in the upper right of that view.
Of what?
Yeah, that one right there. Click the X and that should make it go away. So
Well, if I click that,
you want to
I
see
won't
the
be able to
view
see my
behind
names.
uh, you want to see the view behind it. We really did have this all up and running, so I'm not sure what happened.
Is that out of the way now?
There it is. It is. Yep. You're good to go.
Okay. Sorry about that.
I'm gonna I'm getting some people talking, so I'm gonna mute all and then unmute you, Ed. Um, where did you go? Hold tight. Geez, Louise, we're unmute yourself, Ed. I think you can do that. Hey, Ed, are you there? Technical difficulties today. Try it now.
How's that?
There you go. Holy
Okay.
moly.
Yes.
Jeez. An
All
auspicious
right.
start.
Okay. Don't panic yet. We've got 2 hours. We should have plenty of time for the content. Um, Next slide. How many states require ethics? Derek talked about this a little bit. Currently 19 states, as of January 2025. We only update this once a year because it's a little fussy going to each state individually to verify. But 19 states require them. 19 states, and I think it's actually up to 21 now, have an ethics requirement for professional engineers. From point of reference, when we started requiring, only 6 states did in 2013. They're all listed there for your information. And then separately, um, ethics for land surveyors. This is interesting. Either land surveyors are forgotten or much more trustworthy because less states require an ethics class for land surveyors as of January. Um, George, I believe you're a land surveyor. Is that correct? All right, good for you. Land surveyors are more trustworthy, so the engineers need to work on that. All right. Um, so here's how, oh dear, I got 2 slides at once. From ethics and honesty, Gallup poll, the Gallup organization, they poll everything, and I don't know why this is fast forwarding on its own.
Sorry, Ed.
Um, it's going right from this slide to the next one. They do an
Oh,
annual poll since 1976. They've done annual updates since 1990s, and every profession that they survey has decreased over the years. I think between the media, social media, the news, um, there's just an awful lot of bad news out there. Bad news seems to travel fast. Good news, you seem to only share with your grandparents or something. I don't know, but everybody's declined. The good news is engineers are number 3. And many years they're number 2. They didn't do veterinarians every year. So for many years, engineers were number 2 after nurses. And sorry, George, they didn't break surveyors out separately. But nurses have been number 1 for 22 years in a row. Um, Basically, the top five or the top six, five of them are medical because the number six is pharmacists. So nurses, veterinarians, dentists, doctors, and pharmacists top the list. And engineers are up there, either second or third. The bummer is we used to be 66% rated positive. We're at 60 in the last poll. Um, but when you see the rest, here's the bottom of the list. No shock here. Um, I think members of Congress went down this year, potentially. Anyway, I'm glad we're at the top of the list. So your job is to not lose that trust. So here's the dictionary definition of ethics. The principle of conduct governing an individual or a group, specifically professional ethics. We've I've got a whole collection here um, of definitions, and I'm going to speed through this, but in plain English, I think it's doing the right thing even when no one is watching, right? So we looked at a whole bunch of professional organizations. NSPE has an ethics definition. Uh, it's similar. The National Society of Professional Surveyors version, and I like their version, uphold and advance the integrity, honor, and dignity of land surveyors profession. Um, use knowledge and skills for the enhancement of human welfare and be honest and impartial, serving the fidelity of the public, their employers, and their clients. And state law mimics that. Um, you got to take care of your client, but you also have to protect the public. So a lot of the work that we do as engineers, you can affect them positively or you can affect them negatively. So this is from NALS, the Nevada Association of Land Surveyors, and they also added will not use governmental position or office to compete unfairly with other surveyors. That is covered by state law as well, not NRS 625 or NAC 625, and I'll get to that one in a second. Here's NSPE's Code of Ethics. ASCE has something similar. NSPE adopted this in 1946. ASCE is the oldest engineering organization. They turned 175 this year, and they've had a canon of ethics for a long, long time. Here's a blurb for NCEES. All states are now using the NCEES model. Started in California, or NCEES was founded in 1920. Licensure began in California in 1891, and NCEES makes it easy. We all use standardized exams, which makes it easy to administer exams, but they also will track your professional development hours if you're licensed in multiple states. Highly recommended because it makes it really easy to keep track and to share those. We'll talk about that more at the end of the presentation. Um, More info from NCEES. I'm not going to read all these, but the vision and mission have a very similar statement to state law. Professional ethics in order to safeguard health, safety, and welfare of the public. This is a reoccurring theme. And then NCEES actually has some rules. So if you've got a serious ethical violation, it's both against the law, in Nevada, but they can take your membership away uh, and uh, your rating, if you will. I know I'm familiar with ASCE. I've been involved with ASCE for 35 years, and I was elected to fellow. They can take your fellow away if you're an honorary member or any of those things. They can strip your membership for an ethics violation, and they do often. And if you read the magazines, um, they all pick cases that they see from different state boards and make magazine articles about them, about the violations and what went wrong. So the entire industry takes it seriously. Same NCEES, licensees, responsibility, safeguard the health, safety, and welfare of the public. And even OSHA, um, safety is an ethical decision. The decisions you make that affect safety, uh, when you're in construction management and construction engineering and that sort of thing, it's super important. Um, because there's humans that are affected by those decisions and can be affected negatively from a safety perspective. So I stopped copying and pasting from all the organizations because basically every a professional association I looked at from an engineering and surveying perspective has an ethics statement and requires following some ethical standard to be a member and maintain membership. Same is true with your licensure. We have that standard published in state law. Actually, we have a requirement, and as George put it, sometimes it's a little foggy. So, working definition, using knowledge and skill for the enhancement of human welfare, being honest, impartial, and serving with fidelity the public, their employers, and their clients. And if that's an acceptable definition, then basically all of our work decisions are ethical decisions. And you have a choice of, do I do something that's better for me, or do I do something that's better for the client or better for the public? And you look for those win-win situations. So you're not pitting, personal profit and benefit over the public or your client. But basically every state has a requirement. So I put nearly all because there are simple decisions at work like pizza or pasta for lunch. Probably not an ethical decision. But all those related to design, scope, fee, services, schedule, boil down to that. So we've got some new content. If you've done this, we've been doing this every 6 months for a few years. We got some new content this year. So this is a highly recommended book, The Power of Ethics, written by Susan Latrade. She's an attorney and a PhD, and a professor, amongst other things. She's a professor at Stanford these days. And in her book, she gives what she calls the 4 easy to recall steps to help you focus on ethical decisions. Number 1, principles. Number 2, information. Number 3, stakeholders. And number 4, consequences. And I've got a little content that goes with each of these 4. I read a lot. I didn't finish the book yet, but the first half gets into this, decision making, and then she has a lot of case histories and a lot of what went wrong and what could have been done different. And it's interesting reading. She comes highly recommended and highly regarded. So number 1. Well, before we get to number 1, Susan refers to the edge. And what she means is the edge is the point at which the law no longer safeguards us, and ethics alone must guide our decision. Even where the law does operate effectively, it is the lowest common denominator, not the highest standard, and generally not sufficient a high standard for our behavior. Ethics must operate above and beyond the law. And I thought that really makes sense from a design perspective. The law, if you will, is the code, right? The building code, the structural code, the electrical code, whatever that is. That is not the maximum standard to meet. That's the minimum standard to meet. And there's a lot of discussion about under designing and over designing. And there's been a number of presentations on disaster recovery and disaster response in all the engineering organizations, restoring services after big earthquakes, floods, whatever that is, cyber attack. And the number varies depending on whose paper you're reading, but basically for an incremental increase to exceed the code during those disastrous events, those above and beyond, you design for the 100-year storm or whatever. When you round up a little bit, they see huge benefits paid when you get to that 100-year, and that's an estimate, right? It's not an exact number, but those that are designed exactly to code suffer some failure and hopefully no loss of life. But those that were slightly over designed seem to do much better. So from a code perspective, and not every client agrees with this. Some clients are like, I just want to meet the code. That's all we can afford. We've got to be competitive. I get it. But in many cases, especially critical structures, power plants and public gathering spaces, when we exceed the minimum by just a little bit, it ultimately, you quite often don't see it, right? Infrastructure done well is boring because you don't see grandiose failures. So it's hard to brag about, you know, surviving those disasters, because you're basically pointing out the failures of others, that you're patting yourself on your back because somebody else's building fell down. But that's something to think about, that she defines it as the edge where the code or the law is the minimum, and where do we go beyond? So her first guiding principle is principles, and that is define our identity and tell the world what to expect from us. This is a more personal perspective, as well as how we expect others to behave. Principles apply to ethics choices in all aspects of our lives. We're specifically talking about work here. Principles are not fixed rules like no smoking here. They are enduring guides or guidelines that help us navigate complex problems so that we make consistent choices. So I'm not going to try to explain her entire book, obviously, in 2 hours, but it's a good book. I bought it online. I think I bought a used copy cheap. I think there's an electronic version and an audio book as well. But um, think about those principles that guide your life. For some of us, that's the Scout Law and the Scout Oath or similar. Um, Second principle is information. It's around information. Do I have the information I need to make the decision? Often in the design realm, you're put in an awkward place where you don't have all the information and you need to make decisions, and the client always wants a perfect answer with an imperfect problem. So gap in information is often the first problem to be solved in engineering, to make sure you have all that information. And to paraphrase Donald Rumsfeld, I love this quote: there are things we know and things we don't know, and then there are the things we don't know we don't know. That's the real information gap. Is trying to figure out, am I missing information before I make these decisions? You may make a wise decision, and she puts this in ethical terms. I don't know that you do this on purpose and make it an ethical issue, but quite often there are information gaps, and that's part of our reality and our struggle. Number three, the stakeholders. Who or what could influence or be affected by this decision? So we focus on the client. The contract always talks about the client, their expectation, their needs, their wants. But who is their ultimate customer? Who does this trickle down to? If it's land division, it's those ultimate purchasers of the individual parcels. If you're building, flood control project, it's those people downstream that are ultimately protected or not protected. And a lot of our spectacular failures, this is what shows up. We did something that met the code at the time, made the client happy, but ignored everybody downstream. And the unintended consequences are what got you in trouble. So think about that. When those needs are at odds, you might be in an ethical conundrum or even violation of the law. So this is where you look at the law and the code and the stated requirement and potentially have to make a decision. Is that enough? Is that the right thing to do? And then question 4, potential consequences of my decision. In Susan's opinion, we need to look longer term. I mean, most of us are in the engineering business. We work on infrastructure and projects, and they can last 100 years or more. So she gives a detailed breakdown in the book about looking at the short term, the medium term, and the long term. And often short-term solutions are exciting. They make the news, they make money, but medium and long term, they may not be the right decisions to make. And that's potentially an ethical challenge, thinking about the long term. Um, is this really what you want to do? There's some great or awful examples. One that comes to mind is the splitting of the atom. A number of the scientists involved, after they did it, were afraid of what they had done. And it was frankly a race to see who could do it first. And it happened first in the United States, for better or for worse. But there's a lot of interesting history there and books and movies about that one. So we are right at about an hour. We're going to take a 10-minute break and get the rest of this content hopefully ready to roll. So if you guys are ready, I show 11:58. We'll
Yep.
take off at 12:08.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
And
don't have time to get a full do, but you got time for a quick haircut.
trim. Got time
Yeah.
for a trim.
All right. See you in 10 minutes.
Okay. I'm gonna continue recording just so everyone's aware.
Okay.
Feel free to step away from we're not monitoring you or anything like that. But I've got the recording going, and rather than creating two recordings, I'm going to keep it going. I'll just mute myself, and all of you are muted so that you don't need to do anything. No action required on your part. Let's start recording you. Okay,
Okay.
Ed, get away. Just FYI, Ed, there's several people that are concerned that we were only about half an hour into, it was roughly the halfway point, but I think it's fair to say that you'll get the full 2 hour credit for this webinar, no
Yeah,
matter how long it takes. But hopefully we'll have some time at the end for questions, and we'll
we
just,
should.
yeah,
And this slide is a guess as to where the midpoint is because it's a new slideshow. And
yeah.
so anyway, we'll continue on. I think there's more content in the second half with that.
now that everybody's had a haircut and looking trim. So
There we go. Next slide. So, uh, we're going to talk about the types of complaints we typically get. And as previously discussed, I think a lot of decisions come down to ethical decisions. And so anyway, we entitled this portion the How to Avoid the Call. It's usually an email, but I mean, we do call from time to time to chat. So we're going to run through the statutorial requirements, but in plain English, have a written contract. That comes up all too often on small jobs. Um, there's only 4 elements required in a contract: scope, fee, delivery dates, or some sort of schedule, and a disclosure about whether you have professional liability insurance. In Nevada, you don't need to have professional liability insurance, but you must disclose that you either have it or you do not. And in some cases, people offer it project by project for an extra cost. So please have a written contract. First thing we're going to ask for if there's a complaint, and often it is your get out of jail free card, if you will, if you're following the terms of your contract. Many complaints go away if you're delivering on time and you're sticking to the original services. Often there's a discrepancy about what people asked for and what they really wanted. I'm sure we've all faced that. You read the scope, it's clear to you, but they have a completely different expectation. So put it in writing. Manage expectations with your client. So when you have a difficult situation, a difficult review, something that's never been done before, you expect to have a longer review period, whatever that is, explain that to the client. I know they don't always listen, but start with that. A biggie is call back. We get a lot of complaints simply because they have not heard from their engineer or surveyor, and they're worried about usually schedule and price. And so they'll call the state board out of frustration and say, my consultant won't call me back and I'm frustrated. And for better or for worse, the statute says we shall investigate all complaints. So a lot of complaints don't sound like they're really an engineering complaint at all, but we are obligated to follow up by state law. And as a board staff, we're under scrutiny from the state. They say, "Are you carrying out the terms of the law?" So we investigate them all, regardless of how they sound, and have to, and the first thing we'll ask for is that contract and scope of services. But call back. Number 2 on the complaint list after phone calls is probably email, voicemail, text messaging, that sort of thing. Don't overpromise. The next 2 go together. Don't overpromise and stick to your expertise. The expertise is actually in the law. You've got to practice within your area of expertise and within the parameters of your license. We're discipline specific in Nevada. So there are people that have one type of license and do have an expertise in another area. But in Nevada, we license by discipline. So be careful there. And yesterday's law seminar is to help understand NAC and NRS 625. They govern most of our activities. And now I'll run through some of those statutes. Statutes are the law, right? NRS is Nevada Revised Statute. That is the law of Nevada. And NAC, the Nevada Administrative Code, are those rules that we follow. They address professional conduct, accuracy standards, in some cases, timing, recordation of maps, that sort of thing. And then in addition, if you work for the government, and I do, and I did, I worked for the city of Henderson for 30 years and now work for the state board. NRS 281 This chapter is the Nevada Ethics in Government Law. So if you work for the government and you're an engineer or a surveyor, um, licensed or unlicensed, when you work for the government, there is yet another chapter that covers your activities as an employee. So as a professional, it covers most of us. If you're a licensed professional, you're covered. It covers professionals. It covers elected, appointed. So be conservative there. You do not want an ethics investigation by the State Board of Ethics. Um, my old neighbor worked for the school district, and during an election, she was not elected. She was a superintendent level employee, and during an election, she shared some information, and someone lodged an ethics complaint that she was campaigning for a candidate for the school board while she was at work. And she was in government affairs. So her job was to share information. And by sharing information about someone running for office, uh, she had a full state ethics commission investigation, was in the newspaper multiple times, ultimately was exonerated of any wrongdoing, after being dragged through the mud because she was not choosing sides. She was not politicking for anybody, but simply stating who was running, who was not, a statement of fact. And so be very careful. Some people will not hesitate to lodge a complaint, and it can come to the state board for investigation. It can also go to the Board of Ethics. So keep that in mind. All right, most common violations. 625-410 is grounds for discipline for any action that violates the law. That's sort of the generic catch-all. NAC 625-530 is specifically relations with employers and clients. 625-565 is unlawful use of signature or stamp. 625-545, written contract required for each client. And 625-520 is the unlawful practice of engineering. So those are, I hope, self-explanatory. The unlawful practice of engineering can be practicing outside your area expertise or practicing without a license. That's worse in my perspective. We have a few people that market and offer engineering, and it is against the law to be misleading about offering professional services. So if you're not a licensed engineer, but the term gets thrown around generically sometimes. So you see residential designers and things like that that will say we do design and engineering, and they do not have the ability to stamp and seal drawings. Sometimes leaves the client in a lurch because they become owner builder and have to become the expert if they want to get that work permitted. So that's one we follow up on from time to time. And then NAC 625 of 510 specifically, the fundamental principles. This is the code of conduct section. We didn't talk about it today. Yesterday, we had a picture of our tan book. The NAC and NRS are obviously available on state's website, and we publish a book, and all registrants are eligible to get a free copy. If you go to our webpage, there's a drop down there for what's it under, Derek? Contact board staff or something. And anyway, we will mail you one of these, but we don't update them every 6 months because there are constant changes to NRS and NAC, and they take a long time to get published. So if you're worried about a current revision, for example, the things that were approved by the legislature last summer, those are not all published on the website yet, nor are they in our tan book, but they are on the state's website. So we have hot links to the current revised language because sometimes it takes months and months and months before it's all published. So as an aside, if you're looking for the latest version of the code or a statute, go to our website. You can find it on the state's website as well, but the the default will take you to the old published information, and it's often out of date. It takes a while to get all the websites and information updated. Did you want to say something in there, Derek?
Yeah, I was just going to say that that link is on our website under the first tab under engineers and land surveyors. It's a simple request form. We'll mail you a copy of that book.
Very good. Thank you.
Mhm.
So, fundamental principles. Um, and I highlighted some key phrases here. A licensee shall uphold and advance the honor and dignity of the profession by maintaining a high standard of ethical conduct. So there's where it's the requirement. It's not a definition. It tells you have to do it. Doesn't tell you exactly what that is. But one, two, and three are similar to those other pieces that the professional organizations have. Be honest and impartial and serve his or her employer, client, and the public with integrity. So it's all of them. It's a three-legged stool. Um, your employer, your client, and the public. So any one of those is broken and the stool topples over. And number two, strive to increase the standard of skill and practice in the professional engineering and land surveying profession. And third, use his or her knowledge and skills for the advancement of human welfare. And number two can be difficult when you try to exceed a code or improve on something. There's a lot of inertia, especially where permits from a government entity are involved. I worked for a government entity, so I can say this. And as somebody who's done projects at home, I've never seen it done like that before, more than once. So trying to when you're trying to increase that standard, or work a little bit outside the box, or color outside the line, sometimes that can be difficult. And if if you are absolutely sure this is a big improvement, I would say keep at it, but it's not always easy. Um, because we're kind of engineering and surveying are very rule driven, and frankly a bit checklist driven sometimes. This is how we do it. These are the three things you got to have. Um, so stick to it if you're doing it for the right reasons. 625-520's more specific relations with the public. And board staff views the public not only as Joe citizen, but government entities, all those involved in the process. Um, could even be a coworker. We've had complaints from coworkers saying, I think this is an ethical violation and here's why, or I think this is a violation of NRS. It's a coworker. I feel like a whistleblower, but I felt like I had to say something. So remember, this cast a very wide net. Um, and this is where the safety, health, and welfare of the public, this is spelled out in the law. So it is a requirement. It is the law to be cognizant that your first and foremost responsibility is the safety, health, and welfare of the public in the performance of his or her professional duties. Um, there's a lot of good stories there, I'm sure. I remember, I don't know, it's kind of a sad story. It was a long time ago, over 30 years ago. Um, a child was hit by a car. And sadly, I work for a government entity where this has happened. And the news calls, they want somebody to go on TV and explain how a kid could be hit by a car. And of course, the politicians at that government entity didn't want to speak. That's a really sad situation. It's kind of a no-win situation. So they sent the traffic engineer. And they asked an engineer a technical question, and they were expecting a non-technical answer, but they got a technical answer. And the reporter said, how many kids got to die before we get a new traffic signal? And he gave, at the time, the old manual on uniform traffic control device answer on signal warrants, 3, which was technically correct, but a terrible answer. So um, he survived that firestorm, and that entity built a new traffic signal. Um, may or may not have been warranted, but they built a traffic signal hoping that it would solve this problem. And that's a case where the doing the technically correct thing may not have really taken in the public's perspective fully. Was it an ethics violation? Not really. I think it was more it was an honest answer in his mind to a technical question. They've since changed the warrant analysis to say, or traffic engineer's recommendations. So one can be the number. One's too many. No amount of dead pedestrians is the right number. I mean, the right number is zero, but anyway, really sad that played out live on the news, and everybody I knew that had anything to do with traffic, cringed. We all cringed. But anyway, it ended up, I won't say it had a happy ending. A child died, but they got a traffic signal and satisfied the neighborhood, and we moved on. But remember, our primary responsibility, safety, health, and welfare of the public. That shows up more or less again in 625005. That's the purpose statement I quoted at the beginning for the state board. That's why we regulate. That's why we have exams. That's why we care. It's so that we all meet the minimum standard to practice engineering and surveying. I think we've covered these three already. And then we get to 625540, relations with other engineers or land surveyors. Um, there is a requirement. It's both a legal requirement, potentially an ethical requirement. If you see something you don't like, if you see a discrepancy, if you see an inaccuracy, your first responsibility is to reach out to that design professional and say, I got a different answer. This comes up a lot in surveying, boundary lines and monumentation and horizontal accuracy. So we see complaints because there's differences between maps, and sometimes the surveyors work it out like they should, and sometimes they agree to disagree, which is fine if they're both confident in their answer and their research. But your first obligation is to reach out, not to rush to the recorder's office to be the first to record or the first to submit to the entity or the first to get an approval. Sometimes you got to take a pause there. And sometimes the client's got to stick to your situation than they realize. So I feel for you when you're in those situations. You end up with angry clients. We get complaints all the time. We've had complaints that one owner is just sure their map must be right, and they want the other map removed from the public record, which the board has no jurisdiction there. That's not going to happen. But they want to lodge a complaint to have the other surveyor disbarred and have their maps removed from the permanent record. So it becomes a real hot button. So make that first step. Reach out to the other engineer surveyor and see if you ultimately agree on the answer. And number two, 545, that written contract requirement, we've covered that. And then 550 covers licensee employed by a government entity. This is separate from the ethics statute. This is, and part of this overlaps with the ethics statute. If you work for the government, you shouldn't be working for anybody else when you're on government time. And sadly, that had to be stated in state law because it must have been a problem at some point. But if any of you remember Governor Kenny Gwynn, many years ago, he was a guest lunch speaker at an ASCE luncheon, and he had this little book of cowboy quotes that he said were his guiding principles. And one of them was, I still remember this, he said, "You ride for the brand," meaning in cowboy lingo, if whoever has the brand, you work for them and their cattle. But from the same perspective, who's your employer? That's who you work for. Take care of your employer and their clients first. And moonlighting can be viewed as an ethical problem. We had a complaint from an engineering firm. And in the investigation, it turns out two engineering firms. We had an engineer that was out looking for a job, not an unusual situation. And he or she, sends out resumes and, gets on LinkedIn, whatever they do these days, and gets a job offer from firm Alpha. And firm Alpha says, when can you start? And here's what we can offer. And it wasn't, I guess, his dream job, his or her dream job. But he needed a job, or he or she took the position at Alpha Engineering, or the Alpha firm, started working. A couple weeks later, here's from the Beta firm. And he thought, well, this is a better fit for me. These guys have very flexible hours. I can work from home. So it was kind of the end of COVID, and there was a lot of working from home going on. So he accepted employment with Beta, but didn't quit working at Alpha. And I guess they were behind on their bills. They were unemployed for a little while there. So they thought, well, I'll just work two jobs for a little while, and then I'll quit. I think I'll quit the first one because I think I like the second one, but
Hey,
maybe I'll
Ed,
just work there for a while.
sorry
Yeah.
to interrupt. The slide is not matching. I think you need to advance it.
No, there's not another slide for this. This was just a
Okay.
story that went with.
All right, just making sure
Yeah.
we weren't getting ahead of ourselves.
Oh, sorry. No,
Sorry.
you're right.
No,
So
yeah, you're good.
just because we got so far ahead on the first half, we
Yeah.
didn't really get through half. So anyway, this person works the two jobs, and after a while decided, I'm going to keep both jobs. And they both said, you're going to be a salaried employee and you work for us and we're your primary employer. And he or she agreed to all the terms and kept both jobs. And one of the employers noticed that the work was always completed at either 11:45 at night or 4 o'clock in the morning, either really late or really early. And the other one had more traditional business hours, but was work from home. And that person would be logged in during the day. So we got a complaint, and then during the investigation realized this person was pretending to be full-time employed by both firms and more or less worked 40 hours a week, but didn't tell either one, and potentially had projects on both sides of the fence. And they were both upset. And ultimately, both firms fired him or her, and the state board sanctioned them because there's a violation of the state statute about taking care of your client and your employer, that you have a responsibility to work for your employer. And ended up pretty awful situation, two angry firms and an unemployed engineer again. So sorry, yeah, that didn't really go with that slide. It just made me think of that as we were going through these, and I realized we had lots of time. So hopefully that was somehow useful.
I think it was. I just wanted to make sure we weren't
Prepare
getting
yourself.
ahead of our quiz. Yeah.
We're going to play a video if it works. This is a video that ASCE published during COVID on engineering ethics and competence. And so this is my friend David O'Day. He was the owner of a structural engineering firm. He was bought out by a larger firm. He's in Connecticut and Massachusetts, a brilliant man. I work with him on a lot of ASCE conference topics. And anyway, I'm gonna let Mr. David O'Day take it away. Cross fingers.
Yes.
Give me a thumbs up if you have audio.
We got audio. A little buffering, but it's
Microphone check 1 2 1 2. All right, I'm recording.
Yep, red light's on. It's recording.
Engineering competence is a fundamental responsibility for practicing in our field because we have a direct impact on public safety.
So there's an education and experience competence, and then there's a project code of practice competence level.
Being a competent engineer today is focused on understanding the ethical implications of everything that you do and understanding that you need to know all of your coursework and the shortcomings. So knowing where you're good and where you're not good and where you need help.
A competence is all about lifelong learning. You need to stay current with the times. You stay still, you fall back. Not only do you lose relevance, but you could potentially be dangerous to the very people you're trying to serve.
People expect that the infrastructure that we build, the buildings that we erect, will be safe. They take that for granted. So therefore, we have a fundamental responsibility to be competent and understand the principles and practice of engineering so that we can do our jobs right.
Ethics and expertise, now that's a really important intersection. Where mistakes are going to get made is that somebody says, well, I'm not really sure, but I think this is okay. That's really never okay.
The idea of competence is going to change quite a bit in terms of it's going to become more specialized. So what I think is going to happen is there's going to be more certification programs for really specific applications of engineering that helps kind of establish competency.
I think we have to kind of take our careers on a parallel path. On the one hand, we have to take a very high level and general view of engineering science. But at the same time, on a parallel path, we need to be able to take deep dives into our areas of expertise.
Problems need to be solved in a team model where you bring in different experts from different fields that all come together towards an integrated project.
The pace of innovation is accelerating and new knowledge is being constantly created. Therefore, we cannot stand on the knowledge that we learned in the past. We have to be on our feet and continuously learn.
Engineers push innovation forward because we think differently. We try to push the limit of what the human body, what the next machine can do.
So the pace of innovation is expanding really rapidly, exponentially even. And I say this because, 10 years ago, the field I'm in now didn't exist.
Engineering knowledge is supposed to be doubling every 13 months.
Well, the pace of innovation is mind-boggling. Our government agency is trying to keep up with the many developments that are currently out in the market. Robotics in construction, robotics in manufacturing, artificial intelligence, autonomous vehicles, which will change the way we design our transportation infrastructure, the need for a broad-based telecommunication and everything that comes with the integration of all these systems. That's what's so exciting and challenging at the same time.
It is the engineer's ethical duty to understand the algorithms that we develop, the data that's being input into those algorithms, and the outputs of those algorithms. Because it can be a disastrous result if we put in the wrong things, or it can be the benefit of humankind if we do the right things.
What was state of the art yesterday becomes a dinosaur today. An example I would give you is of how deep learning came and transformed every single field. It has transformed autonomous driving to the extent that many of the older technologies are being replaced by deep learning.
Lifelong learning is a part of the ethical code. When I was in school, machine learning and AI wasn't a thing. Algorithms were just coming to the forefront of things. Now they're a part of everyday life, and that's less than 20 years ago.
Chemical engineers are using advanced computational techniques like big data analysis to analyze all the information that's going on, for example, all the data that's collected in a refinery, so that we can learn when something is going to break before it breaks.
We're now getting feedback from our projects continually, and we need to learn from that feedback. And the only way we can get that feedback is through AI.
The state of knowledge is constantly changing. And that means that in order to ethically practice, we have to constantly update our knowledge base. We have to engage in lifelong learning as engineering professionals through continuing education, participating in conferences and seminars, interacting with other professionals who are working in areas that will impact our practice. It's really our ethical responsibility to keep up with these new ideas and new information that's available to the practice, because they impact our ability to do our jobs effectively.
Stop it
Yes.
now. Stop recording.
Fair.
You can hit the button one time.
Good
All
job.
right.
Yep.
So before we move on, there's a couple of things brought up. One of the engineers mentioned guessing. Do not guess. But it's common for people to say, I need an engineer's estimate, right? I mean, that's an actual term that's spelled out in the law. You can certify an estimate by putting a seal on it. And of all places, I got a really good at sort of working definition from an attorney. This was a preamble in a deposition, and he said, I don't want you to guess, but you may estimate from time to time. Do you understand the difference? And he was asking an engineer. And he said, before you answer, I'm going to tell you, this is the difference. This is my working definition. And this is more a term of art, not of law. But I found it useful. He said, if you're asked to estimate, you can use your skills to come up with a pretty good estimate. For example, they were in a conference room, and he said, I bet you can estimate the length of this conference room table by counting the ceiling tiles. And the engineer said, yes, I could. Or floor tiles, right? They're commonly in 12-inch squares or 16-inch squares. And so using floor tiles or ceiling tiles, you can estimate the size of a room or estimate the size of the table. And he said, sitting here in this conference room, you could estimate this table. And he said, yes, I agree. And he said, could you estimate the size of my kitchen table at home from here? And he said, no. And he said, that would be a guess. If you do not have that useful information, and this goes to Susan's book, do we have enough information to make a sound decision? Some of our decisions are not made on hard math and calculations. They're made on it's an estimate. But when you're in that position, make sure that you've got the expertise that's within your discipline, if you will, to make that estimate. And then in the video, they talk about technology marches on and you want to remain competent. And in Susan's book, she talks about taking a long-term view, the short, medium, and long-term view of your decisions. And I think this is the ethical conundrum. So changes in the construction world are often in construction methods, and that may or may not affect safety, the speed at which things are constructed. And it also commonly is changes in materials. And we see new materials that are lighter or cheaper or faster or whatever they are. They're so-called green materials because they're highly recyclable or they're made out of recycled content. But from Susan's perspective, are we looking way down the road? Do we know enough to make a decision? I worked a lot with the pipe industry over the years. And the debate and frankly the argument and the fight over plastic pipe, corrugated metal pipe, and concrete pipe. Concrete pipe is very durable. It's been around thousands of years. Unreinforced concrete pipe goes, back to the Roman days. Um, they've built a very solid industry. And the plastic pipe folks say, yeah, but you can only put two pieces on a trailer. They're so heavy. I have something that's lighter and easier and takes less labor and is safer. Um, and then corrugated metal says we can do all that and ours doesn't catch on fire. And so there's a lot to consider there without getting into the merits. And I spent a lot of time working with the industry, with the manufacturers of all three. And and my argument is there's no bad materials, but there's bad applications of materials. So just food for thought. Think about those long time ramifications. When somebody says, I can deliver this product cheaper and faster, your client's probably going to love it. But is this something your client's going to own for 75 years? Is it worth slightly slower, slightly more money for a 75-year expected design life or a 100-year expected design life? So to George's point, there's no right or wrong answer, but there's a lot to consider here. And it may or may not be an ethical dilemma. So this should forward. No. There we go. Okay. We've got these are old case histories to discuss. These were published by NSPE. These are not local. We're not trying to embarrass anybody, but we've got 3 scenarios and we're trying to make this more interactive. So there is going to be a quiz associated. So I hope everyone's paying close attention. These are the you be the judge. First situation, potential conflict of interest. A Department of Transportation is seeking design build contractor for a specialized project. Engineer A possesses a unique experience in this area and has been contacted by 3 different competing contractors. Each contractor is going to submit a proposal. So the question is, now I can show you the question. Would it be ethical for engineer A to participate with multiple contractors in response to the DOT's request for proposals? And with that, I'm going to launch a quiz. All right, we're getting lots of answers. I was going to play music at this part, but considering the buffering problems I've had and the earlier technical difficulties, I won't. The answers are slowing down. We're still missing about 100 of you. And I did not test this quiz on all devices, so there may be some of you that don't see it or can't answer. This came up yesterday. They couldn't see the quiz with an older version of Zoom. You may not be able to answer if you're on your telephone.
Yeah.
But at this point, I've got 405 of 494 participants. I'll give it just another second. All right. I'm going to end the poll and share the results. This is very interesting. Can everyone see the results?
Yes.
Somebody give me a thumbs up.
You can see it. I can see it. So
Okay.
good. Yeah.
So interesting. 59% said yes, it's ethical. 41% said no, it's not. The correct answer is yes, it's ethical. But to Susan's point, did you have all the information to make a good decision? Maybe not. But here's what NSPE says. Come on, slide.
You have to close the poll.
I'm gonna stop sharing. Yeah, I'm oh dear.
Uh-oh, did you hang?
Yeah, give me a second. I got an hourglass. Sheesh.
Oh,
First time we gave the quiz to 494 people. It works fine when
yeah,
there's only 3 of us.
yeah, yeah. It's a
Okay,
small.
I'm gonna end the quiz and I'll restart the quiz in a minute and see if that helps. And now presentation view is not responding.
Oh, geez.
Oh dear.
Well, do
Let's
you
give it
want
one
me?
more second.
I can.
Okay, it's saying I should restart.
All right. Do you want me to? I can start up my.
Okay, go to slide 47,
Okay.
and then I'll stop sharing and you start sharing.
Okay. Okay. Give me a second while I'm firing this up.
Okay.
Oh yeah, it's getting
Nothing?
well, just I think I'm seeing what you're seeing. Yeah, it's gonna ask me to.
Okay. I clicked restart. I'm sorry, everybody. Give me just a minute.
That's okay. Just I can zoom through this real quick and get down to where we were.
Okay, you're in it now?
Yeah, you should be seeing what I'm
Yes.
representing.
Yeah. Go to 47.
Yeah. Do. Okay. All right. 47. If you want to go to 48, actually, I think, right?
Yes, we were at 47. Okay. Well, back up. Back up.
You want to go back? Wait a second.
Back up.
This is the next question.
Yeah, stop right here. This is the outcome. We couldn't, this is where I locked up.
Okay.
Okay. The NSPE, this is an NSPE case history. They said it is ethical for engineer A to participate with multiple contractors since the award only goes to one of the contractors. Engineer A will only work for the contractor that wins the award. Now, this is my follow-up. Should each proposal be identical? And in my opinion, they don't have to be identical. If you have a relationship with the first contractor, a really good, positive working relationship with the first one, yeah, we have a good comment here. As long as the engineer does not save privileged information between contractors, and that would be my point. If your basic services are identical, but the price could be different because you have a really great relationship with one of them, and in the past you've had a rocky relationship with the other, then the ultimate scope of services could be a little bit difficult. But yeah, please don't withhold information for one so that their proposal is viewed as lacking. That would be unethical. From Rick, as long as the engineer wants to permanently damage his relationship with the other contractors, that's a possibility, Rick. But if it's a real specialty item and you're the expert, in a lot of cases in smaller towns in Nevada, you may not have a lot of choices. So you may be the expert for something. You may be the only person that provides special inspections in a community. So if you can provide that service fairly to all involved, so be it. It would also be tricky if, in this case, the DOT said, you know what, we're gonna award the first portion of the work to contractor one and the second portion of the work to contractor two. Now you have a real pickle. Can you work for one and two? Because you're potentially inspecting work that you have to tell the other one it's substandard. His portion, his or her portion is not up to spec. That would probably not be acceptable. You would have to pick and choose who you're going to work for. Ultimately, I think you could work for all three, make sure you provide the same level of service to all three. And but yes, it can be tricky, right? You might need more information. This is where you might send a request for information back to get clarity.
So you ready for the
Yes,
poll?
from Teresa, might not be best practice, but it is okay according to NRS. So, and these are not specific to Nevada law. These were NSPE, National Society of Professional Engineers. So, I
You want to
don't even
launch?
know what state this
You
took.
want to
Yeah,
launch
go
the
to
poll? I
no,
can,
you got to go to the question. Go to question number 2.
yeah. So do you want to launch the poll yet, or
No, no, I'll
no?
launch the poll. Yeah, go to question 2.
Are you okay?
So, I mean, I don't want to launch it yet, and risk freezing while you're going through the slide. Go to the next slide.
Got you. Sorry. Okay.
Okay, this is a more complicated situation. Iki, the engineer, serves as an inspector on a bridge renovation project. Iki's employer, Gamma Engineering, holds a construction inspection services contract with the town where they're building this bridge. Zeta Construction is the general contractor on the project, and that's Iki the engineer's former employer. Okay, next slide. So, potential conflict of interest on bridge inspection and shop drawings. The situation is engineer Iki continues to perform occasional jobs for Zeta Construction on a part-time basis. They call him for his expertise. One project was the preparation of shop drawings for the city bridge project. Iki did not disclose his relationship with Zeta Construction or Gamma Engineering or to the town. He didn't tell any of them. So at this point, he's working for all three. Now we'll go to question 2. All right. You've got another poll. Can everybody see the poll?
Yep.
And sorry, the question says, should Ed have disclosed his relationship? Derek made me change it from Ed. I changed it to Iki, which is Hawaiian for Ed. I figured if I was going to put in a name, I didn't want to name someone else. I'm not trying to embarrass anybody, so I put my own name in there. And Derek was trying to protect me. And this one, it looks like we're all in agreement thus far.
And the polls don't let you change your answer, unfortunately. I don't think it allows you to change your answer.
No,
so.
I think it's a one and done unless we restart.
Mhm.
So now we actually have a little bit of disagreement, or we have people that clicked the wrong one on accident.
You just gave away
The
the
answers
answer.
are slowing down, and we got to about the same. All right, we're up to 4:15 and they're slowing way down. So I'm going to end this and share the result. The correct answer is you should always disclose those relationships. 3 people out there said they had no obligation to disclose anything to anyone. I hope that was an accidental answer. In this case, yes. If you have a past and ongoing relationship with the contractor and a relationship with your employer who's employed by the city to do all their special inspections, you better not be doing inspections on your own shop drawings and your own work. That is definitely a foul. And That's an ethical problem right there. So 99%, we're doing pretty good.
All right, there you go.
Oh, sorry. Stop. Okay.
What if this happened in Nevada? That's kind of a second
Okay.
question. But,
But that's not a poll question.
It's not a
So
poll question.
keep clicking. I think there's an answer there. There we go. Our fundamental principles and practices, relations with employers and clients, and written contract, right? If you're spelling out all the terms, and taking care of your employer first. So who's your full-time employer and who's your part-time? And hopefully you have permission from your employer to work for the contractor part-time. But in this case, you should disclose that and pick which one you're working for. Can't work for both sides. All right, next slide. Okay, this is sort of complicated. So follow along. Engineer BD for Big Deal. He owns a firm. He's the president of an engineering firm, provides services for public entities in the region. A significant client is County Big Bucks. They regularly award contracts to Big Deal's engineering firm. One of the county commissioners is facing a hotly contested race for re-election. The state statute limits contributions, political contributions, to $5,000. Go to the next slide. So, can Mr. Big Deal contribute? He feels compelled to contribute. Oh, back up.
Sorry,
Mr. Flying Fingers.
No, it's did it on its own.
I know. It's tricky.
Jeez.
We got a ghost in the machine today.
Yeah.
Mr. Big Deal feels compelled to contribute, but is worried about the perception if the amount is too high. So Mr. Big Deal made a contribution of $100, which is in line with company policy. But it was one of the smaller contributions, by the way, received by the county commissioner. So, quiz time. Question is a campaign contribution ethical? And was Mr. Big Deal's concern about perception of impropriety valid? And would a contribution up to the legal limit be ethical? So it's kind of two parts. Let's go to
You have the poll.
the poll. Was the campaign contribution ethical? And the answers are pouring in.
Mm-hmm. This one's a little bit more split. Think you're good, Ed.
They're still trickling in, and we have the smallest number of participants so far.
Perhaps
Okay, we're up to 403. Some of you don't want to touch this one. Those that work at government entities have maybe a slightly different answer. So the correct answer is yes. Campaign contribution is ethical. It is protected activity for an owner of a private firm or any private citizen to participate in the political process. However, we talked about this a little bit earlier. If you're a government employee, don't do it on the clock. Don't do anything with your government email, your government phone. Do it on your own time. But you can contribute if you choose to. And then I'm going to go back because I believe, oh, that was the last, we didn't have two parts to that one. So
No.
I'm going to close that.
You
So
got it?
yes, your right to participate is protected. Click that one again. Oh, okay, go back one. The second part was, would it be okay to contribute a larger amount? Absolutely. The actual dollar amount, if it's covered by state law, you're okay whether it's $100 or $5,000. And a lot of businesses contribute a little bit of money to every person running for office, just sort of to cover their bases. But it is ethical, and we had a good question in the chat. Let me back up.
I've got some written down, Ed, that we can go through.
Well, I wanted to hit this one real quick. From Matt, could a surveyor be under contract for construction? This was to the previous question with the contractor and the city. Could a surveyor be under contract for construction layout for the contractor and also for construction as-built for the owner or the general contractor? So that one's a little different situation, and I agree with you, Matt. It's probably a yes, and it would, because as-built, they've got their own little section of the law who can prepare as-built. The general contractor could submit the as-built, and you could work on their behalf. But if you did the construction layout for the contractor and did the as-built for the contractor, you're 100% safe. If the entity wants to pay for the as-built, but as-built are generally a statement of fact, right? You're picking up that information wherever it lies, putting it on a piece of paper, or plotting it on the original drawing, saying it matches or it doesn't match. So that one is probably a yes. And you may be the expert in the area, and there may not be any other choices depending on the situation. So I would say yes, probably. Tread carefully. And then Derek, you had, yeah, we've got 25 minutes. We've got plenty of time for questions and answers. Did you have some?
I do.
Queued
I've
up
got,
you
I've
wanted
got
to-
some written. I'll just give you my little, I've got an explanation here at this point.
Okay, hang on one second too. Before we go on, there's Derek's email address. If you've got a burning issue and it doesn't fit, or you don't want to put it in the chat, email Derek. We'll try to answer those questions here or email after the session. We got some really detailed, specific questions yesterday after the law session that we replied to, and gave him some direction and tried to help. So anyway, take it away, Derek.
No, that's okay. So my email is there. You don't have to write it down. You can get it on the website as well. If you go under board staff, my email's there, and then you can just click on it if that's easier. Our URL is a little bit of a scrambled alphabet soup. Anyway, I'll leave this here for just a second so everybody can get it. The other thing I want to let everybody know, and lots of people have asked the question, how do I document my participation in this? It's the honor system. If you participated yesterday, we gave you the same explanation. Nevada relies on you to be honest and ethical in reporting your PDH activities. And so all we ask is that you report that you attended, that you satisfied the 2 hours of ethics and the 1 hour of Nevada law when you renew your license. So that is that. However, if some of you would like a certificate, I have created a certificate that looks like, well, actually, that's where the continuing it. So I created a
Yeah,
certificate.
answer.
Yeah.
Go to
So-
this one first, Derek.
Yeah.
We got a lot of questions about, is it recorded and where will it be? So
And that is another question that we get. So this is where the continuing education requirements live on our website. That is the URL at the top. This is what the page looks like. When I put the recorded versions of all the webinars up on this page, and the most recent versions will always be there. I have not updated the website yet with today's webinar, obviously, or yesterday's, but that should happen in the next day or so. So if you need to rewatch it for whatever reason or refer it to anybody else that didn't get to attend, this is the page where it lives. The certificate that I just was mentioning looks like this. You can literally do a screen grab of this on your computer, and that is absolutely acceptable. however you keep records of your PDH activity, report or certificates or any kind of documentation, that's completely up to you. If you are audited, we will ask you to provide, some kind of proof that you participated, and that proof doesn't have to be anything more than a note that on November 13th, 2025, I attended the webinar on ethics. That's good enough for us. But if you'd like a certificate, this is what it looks like. You've got my email. I can send you a PDF of this certificate and you'll be covered. So that's it. Ed, you guys wanna roll into some questions?
Yeah. If you've got some questions, we've got another 20 minutes.
Yep. I sort of kept notes as they were rolling in on chat. And again, please use email. We will not be able to get through all the questions in chat, and it's very difficult to try to read these.
Yeah.
It's a little small window. So send me an email if you have a detailed question, please, and then I'll get you an answer.
And we got some good
Grant,
comments.
yes, there were some very good ones. Grant asks a question about what does a contract cover? And he had some specifics on that question about should it cover variables or things that fall outside the scope of work and schedule and things like that. And I think so Grant, what I would direct you to is the regulation that specifies that. It's on our website. There's a link to it. If you go under statutes and regs, 625.545 is going to give you the specifics. Now, I had the same question yesterday. Go ahead.
Let me talk about that a second.
Yep.
So great question, because there's only 4 elements that are required by law.
Yep.
But there are certainly more things, and I would say applause to you, Grant, because yes, put in there those things that will adjust the schedule, unforeseen conditions. I've seen some good ones that said, here's my proposal for X, Y, and Z. I'm going to do a drainage study and a site plan for a 4-lot, cul-de-sac. But if I have to seek additional review from NDOT, Regional Flood Control, the Water Authority, those are above and beyond. So they've looked at the site and thought, I don't think I have any of those other regional reviews required. But if they come up, they obviously add time. So helps with scope creep. I had a previous question in a previous seminar, and they said, so I have a contract that covers the original scope. What about additional work? Absolutely, write it down, right? Do an addendum that says, we're going to add these services. We're also going to add 24 days to the calendar or whatever that is, whatever that looks like. There's another phase or another step. Cover yourself with the time, the money, and the description of that work. So when you get to the end, they don't say, they overcharged me. And I've seen this. I paid too much and I didn't get everything. And then you see all the emails back and forth about, I want to add on this and I want to add on that. But the consulting firm never did an amendment to the contract, but they did save the emails. There was an offer and acceptance or a request and an acceptance. Yes, I can do that. It'll take this much money and this much time. So absolutely. The short answer is yes. The long answer is yes. More detail. Document, right? If it's not in writing, it potentially never happened or it doesn't count. So good question.
Yeah, and what I was going to say is just those are the minimum requirements, right? So like Ed said, the more the better. Ryan, this is a question for you, Ed. Ryan asked,
Okay.
How many complaints per year and how many of them result in disciplinary action?
Good question. So last year it was reported we had 7 complaints, and that was misinformation. There were 7, and there were actually, there's probably 7 that went to an actual board hearing. So we average about a detailed complaint a week. A lot of times we get emails that are more of a question, like can so-and-so do this or can so-and-so do that? And it's not really a complaint. It's just an inquiry, and the answer may turn into a complaint. But we average about a complaint a week or a little more than a complaint a week. there are probably 50 or 60 a year. And then of those, about 10 to 15% turned into some sort of discipline. And a lot of the discipline is a stipulated agreement. We'll recommend don't do this ever again, and you need to take a class on ethics or something like that. And if that's agreed to, it's not a board hearing, but the agreement will be approved by the board. And then some people just disagree no matter what, and it ends up a board hearing, and that will be aired, publicly. That's a posted meeting and a recorded meeting, and there will be a public discussion about, these are this is the complaint, these are the charges, what do you want to do? And ultimately, the final answer rests in the board's hands. And we like to do this by stipulated agreement because we can agree to the terms, and you promise to take a class on ethics or have your work reviewed by an expert for the next 6 months or something like that. And some people won't agree to anything, and they want their so-called day in court, and so they go in front of the board. But the board is made up of a variety, right? We've got an electrical engineer, a structural engineer, a geotechnical expert, 2 surveyors, a mining, a guy who works for a mine. He's a civil, but mining is his expertise. So they're very diverse. So you really have to convince a diverse group of engineers and surveyors that what you do is acceptable in your niche. So it ends up about a dozen have some sort of discipline probably, and 6 or 7 will be a public board hearing. So hope that fully answers that question.
I think so, yeah. And this one follows kind of along the same lines a little bit. Howard asks, is there something that defines unlawful practice of engineering in the state? And the answer is yes. Howard, you want to go
Yes.
to our statutes and regs, and the specific one you want to look at is NRS 625.520.
Right.
And that one, it spells it out. It's actually one of the longer statutes, I think.
Yes. A couple of key ones, couple of easy ones were discipline specific, so practiced within your discipline. And then if you're not licensed, to be very careful with the marketing of engineering or services where you're not licensed, right? Some people will say, I'm a full service engineering firm. And what they mean is, what they should probably say is, I'm a civil engineer and I provide all sorts of civil engineering, traffic studies, drainage studies, noise studies, whatever. So sometimes that gets misinterpreted or is misleading. And so you need to stick to that area where you're an expert on the subject and clearly identify your limits, and make sure you have a licensed professional if you're marketing engineering services. I don't think you'll be in this group if you didn't have a license, but yes, that unlawful practice is pretty well defined.
Yep, there's and there was a kind of a follow-on question that's related to that, and I don't remember who asked the question, but I was asking why aren't software engineers subject to ethics concerns? And the short answer I gave is because they're not engineers, and it's not a discipline that we recognize in the state, nor one that we regulate. So that's
not licensed by our board.
correct.
So there are certificate programs and licenses, if you will, from third parties or national certificates. But yeah, it's not one that NCEES has an exam. It's not one we administer or regulate. And yeah, by its very nature, software is a slippery subject.
And the question on that one was, where is it specified somewhere? And the answer to that is yes as well. You can get the full list that the disciplines that we recognize and regulate in Nevada. And it's NAC 625.220. That's going to be the full list there. So hopefully you got that. And again, I would encourage anyone on the call to use that statutes and regs link on our website for the most current versions.
Yeah, and before we go on, that's a good question. If NCEES writes an exam and says we want to provide a license for a new classification, one that came up in Nevada was I think it's entertainment engineering. There's a program at UNLV that covers a lot of the rides, if you will, and equipment on the strip to put together, like circ shows. There's hydraulics and controls and electronics. And there's huge overlap between all the disciplines. And so if there's an exam and a demand, that will be reviewed by the board, and they can add to that list. So if there's sufficient demand for a specific license type, that's something the board has purview of. But the first question will be, is there a standard exam? How do we test that knowledge before we grant licensure? So yes, those disciplines are listed. There's A through Q right now, and that list can grow over time if it's appropriate.
Indeed. So Rick asks if a PE stamp, and this is a question we get, or I get when I answer the phones here, can a PE stamp be used on a manufacturer's designs? And I just had this question asked like about a week ago. The specific question was, a piece of equipment was designed outside the state of Nevada, and it was conformed to the engineering requirements of the state where it was built, and it's transported to a project in Nevada. Does it need to be stamped by an engineer in Nevada for the purpose? Does it need to, in other words, would the licensee, the engineer in Nevada, be required to stamp those plans of the original manufacturer of that device?
And the answer is it depends.
Mhm.
So most of the goods we purchase are engineered elsewhere, and you buy them as a complete assembly. There are things in the construction industry that require a listing, UL listing, for example. In Florida, the BOCA code, for hurricanes and impact resistance for doors and windows and frames. And so there are a lot of things that require testing and certification elsewhere. And then those are typically acceptable as a pre-approved assembly, if you will, UL listed or what have you. So that answer depends, because there are projects where it's entirely private. An assembly is going to go on an assembly line in a factory. It's not open to the public. The government entity doesn't require a seal or a review of that assembly, like an assembly line. I know in the city of Henderson, the assembly line itself, the building department didn't review or inspect, but they did review and inspect how it was attached to the ground. If it had to meet, you've got to meet a code for overturning or toppling and seismic. Is it stable? So a lot of those would be just the attachment to the ground was reviewed, and that footing or foundation or method to anchor it was sealed by a local engineer, but the rest of the assembly wasn't. So it depends. It's usually, if it requires a government entity's oversight, it's going to require a local stamp or seal. And in some cases, it will be, as long as, like in this one, Derek, it was built in a neighboring state, it was stamped, it was designed and reviewed and stamped in a neighboring state, and it came to Nevada as a complete assembly. That was viewed as okay. It was a fully engineered solution by somebody in a neighboring state that met or exceeded the requirement. So there was not an additional stamp in Nevada required, but it was an engineered solution.
Well, it actually was required, only because that particular
that client required it, right?
The drainage system that's what it was. It was a drainage system.
Okay.
Was attached to the building where in Nevada.
Okay.
So that it did require a stamp by basically the responsible charge for the project had to stamp it. So.
All right. We've got just a couple more minutes, and we had a great comment. I love this comment from Steve Robertson. Lying about your attendance at the ethics webinar would be the ultimate irony. And, the old rule of thumb when we started this whole PDH thing some years ago, I'm aging myself, but I was licensed when the PDH requirement started, and everybody worried, what do I have to do? how do I know it's good enough? 2 years later, you're going to ask me questions. And the simple answer was write a couple of notes to remind yourself what you learned, what happened that day, so that you can speak about it 2 years later. So if you do the screenshot with the certificate of completion, um, save it as a PDF or print it and then write on it. This
Yeah.
had some new content and some technical troubles.
Yeah.
That will be your reminder. And my counterpart, Steve, he's taught this seminar before, and he is now doing all the audits. And so if Steve goes, "Hey, fall of 2025, do you guys have any difficulties, technical difficulties in ethics?" We said yes. He goes, "Okay." Then he had the right reminder. I know he was there. So I've seen people write down. I went to your presentation and they write down the name of the original submitter, and the speaker's different. And so they didn't go, they didn't pay attention because they said that was the best presentation ever by so and so, and they're like, so and so didn't even come. Were you
Well,
paying attention or did you lie? So it is the ultimate irony to lie about the ethics one. I appreciate your comment. Thanks for
I will
coming,
tell you,
Steve.
yeah, I will tell you, Ed, the ones that are always a little amusing to me is the emails that I get saying, I attended the ethics webinar, but there was no instructions on how to document it or prove that I attended.
Right.
And I'm
Because we
usually
do
think
talk about it at the beginning and the end.
yeah, I usually say, think to myself, well, did you really attend? So anyway, we got 5 minutes. Ed, you want to cover
Yeah.
anything else?
We got a question. Can this ethics webinar fulfill the requirements of other states? That's up to
Yes.
the other state. I don't have jurisdiction in any other states, but most of the states have a generic ethics requirement, right? The ethics shouldn't change at the state line. However, having said that, I do know New York, for example, it has to be pre-approved by New York. So if you submit this to New York, they'll say, I don't know this guy, and Nevada didn't submit anything. So be aware, some states have an extra step. We accept ethics from other states. That's why we track who requires them. So when somebody says, I'm also licensed in New York, we know New York set the bar pretty high because it has to be pre-approved. So it will be acceptable. If it's acceptable to New York, it's acceptable to Nevada, but the converse is not always true. So in that case, the burden's on you, but I would certainly, if push came to shove, if you were audited in another state, we'll support you as a Nevada registrant and say, here's the topics we covered, and it lasted at this point nearly a full 2 hours, and try to help you out if we can. But be aware, I don't have any jurisdiction out of Nevada, and and my jurisdiction in Nevada is just for licensed engineers and surveyors. So outside of that, I'm just another talking head.
He's a pretty good
All right.
talking head, in my opinion.
War-
The one
Warman
thing that
Flip.
the last thing that I wanted, the last little bit of information I want to encourage all of you. Listen, some of you may not have subscribed to the whole social media thing. It is what it is. It's out there. We use it to disseminate information. I said yesterday, we will never post pictures of our breakfast, what we had for breakfast, or our cats, or our girlfriends, boyfriends. We will never do that. We will, however, post information about upcoming webinars, about changes in laws, educational activities regarding the things we do. So for that purpose, I really, and that's our primary way of getting information out to the public. So please sign up for our social media platforms, in particular, probably LinkedIn. Not that I'm not paid by LinkedIn, but that's maybe the one that's the most professional out of the lot. But all the information is available out there, so please follow us there.
All right. Thank you. And I appreciate your participation and your attention. We'll work on, I don't know, bandwidth issues. I don't know. Work perfect. It's the classic work perfect yesterday and then it froze today, but I apologize for that.
It's all right.
And with that, I think we are finished.
Yeah, we're stopped recording. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you in the spring when we do the next one. Have a good day.